Welcome, Wargamers, to 2 Plus Tough, and also welcome to Day 4 of Daughters of Khaine Week. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Scathborn, and this is the internal name the Daughters of Khaine give to their forces that have non-traditional elven forms, right? Really, we're talking about the Malusai and the Khinerai. And fundamentally, for both of these units, these are the souls that Morathi pulled out of Slaanesh, these kind of half-demon corrupted elf souls. And she crafted them to be exactly how they look now. Now, in addition to the Malusai and Khinai variants, we're also going to be talking about the blood-wracked sorceress. She's not technically the Scathborn when they talk about that term within the army ranks, but frankly, for the sake of brevity, she fits in here kind of aesthetically, so that's why we're going to include her tonight. So we're going to start this conversation with the Khinerai, and the full term for them is the Khinerai harpies. And as mentioned, these are the kind of half-broken / tainted souls that were pulled out of Slaanesh. And Morathi formed them to be much like elves, but she gave them wings, which is a level of mutation that is far, far less than the Malusai we'll talk about here in a little bit. Now, it's important to note for the Khinerai, every single one of them comes from Hagnar. Of course, there's many temples of Daughters of Khaine all across the mortal realms. Minor temples in major cities, some scattered across the wilderness, but every one of the Khinerai has an origin in Hagnar. And that's simply due to the fact that that is where Morathi is. That's where she funnels the souls that she steals from Slaanesh and forges them into these units. But it's interesting to know that as we reviewed the different temples and factions of Daughters of Khaine, that all of these units have the same origin, which makes them very different from, say, witch elves, which can be born and spread across all different temples and realms. And after they're born, they fly around the tall buildings and spires over in Hagnar. And every shade solstice was what the event is called. Morathi picks out the best of them, forms a flock, and sends them out to various temples to reinforce them. Which makes sense, right? Functionally, what she does is she takes the souls, makes them, gives them time to fly around Hagnar to make sure they actually work, right? That her forging was accurate and that these units, these Khinerai, will do well. And then she sends them out to go conduct war. But kind of pulling into the theme of the army, and I want to keep drawing this with every one of these videos, how this fits into Morathi's lie, is that this process of making something, testing it, and then setting out for a war, right? That's a very practical thing, but she includes it on a religious level by making it a ceremony, right? Oh, this is the solstice when we beseech the birds of the sky to come aid us, right? Making it sound very aloof and religious when really it's just her manufacturing troops to fight her war effort. Now, the Khinerai harpies really devote themselves to two different methods of combat, and this, much like the Malusai, is how we identify them as units in AOS of the game. There are the Heartrenders, and these are sort of the hit-and-run ranged attack Khinerai. What they do is they use the inertia and high momentum that they get from the speeds they can achieve and launch their javelins, which are said to be strong enough to skewer a rider to his horse to the ground. So you just throw this flagpole-like weapon through a dude, through his horse, to the ground and pin him there. And as mentioned, they really focus on hit-and-run attacks. They have rules for that kind of specifically in the game. And it's really just using a different facet of the movement that they have to do ranged combat. Now, opposite of them are the Khinerai Life Takers. And these are similar in the sense that they use their speed for intense alpha strikes, but they do melee attacks. They come in hard, right? They fly in like a meteor, and right before they hit the ground, they stab out their wings, their legs, their weapons, all directions, and try to impale as many people as possible upon landing. And if you're one of the people who's like lucky enough to survive the initial pounding that a unit of these guys will just deliver, you then have to fight them. Remember, they stand up from that meteor impact ready to go because they've been practicing it. You still have to collect yourself. So it's a devastating alpha strike for melee combat. And so really, to put it simply, both of these units are very similar in the sense that they both have an emphasis on speed and flight, and they just have different ways of maximizing the damage that they can achieve with that specialty. I also imagine they're very easy to hide, as we talked about yesterday, where a lot of the elves, witch elves to be exact, are the best parts of the army to show off to order because they look so normal, right? People get used to seeing witch elves, maybe even Sisters of Slaughter, they might look a little weird with the masks, but this is the face of the army that people are okay with, and so I imagine that Khinerai are pretty popular for that reason. Maybe they can fold the wings, throw a robe on, and all of a sudden they look human enough. So the book doesn't really go into it, but I do wonder how prevalent they are in terms of walking down the street with the rest of the Daughters of Khaine. And so now we're going to move into the second unit that is considered a Scathborn. That is the Malusai. Again, also a broken soul torn from Slaanesh. And these ones are interesting because Morathi uses a blood ritual and magic to make them look like her. And it's true, every single one of them looks like a little mini Morathi when she's in her full serpent form. And they act as the elite guard of the army. And Morathi ensures that every single temple has a complement of Malusai. Now, it's easy to look at this and say, oh yeah, of course she wants to reinforce all of her temples with the strongest and best warriors to act as that powerful backbone of the army. But there's a secondary objective here, because these guys also act as the eyes and ears for Morathi in every temple. They are equal parts spy as they are elite guardian. Right? What they do is they oversee all of the religious ceremonies, the rites, making sure everyone stays in line. They keep an eye out for people who question things, right? Questioning the motivations for fighting, question Morathi's authority, anything like that. And they deal with them in a very harsh way. There's actually a little blurb, like one of those little 1 paragraph long mini stories in the Battle Tome, where someone is questioning Morathi. And so what they do is they walk up behind her and basically stab her straight in the back, and she just crystallizes and dies. We'll get to how she does that in a second. But they are the enforcers of Morathi's religion as well as her spies for it. Now, just like the Khinerai, what's important about these guys is that they are the part of the army that remains hidden. Right? We spoke yesterday about the witch elves and such being the part of the army that Morathi wants people to see because she wants to gain trust and those kinds of things. But this is the part of the army where she doesn't want them to see. So the Malusai hide deep into Daughters of Khaine temples, or they use illusionary magics to disguise themselves so they look like other elves. But those things quickly fade as battle starts. And the Battle Tome clearly states that there are all different kinds of Malusai, but 2 of them are the most prevalent, and those are the 2 variants that we get in the Malusai box. Starting off with the Blood Sisters, this is the melee variant. They are armed with massive glaives, like these big old things. And they're able to channel shadow magic into something called the Scath Touch. And when they touch an enemy with this, it instantly paralyzes them, and it turns them into crystal. But it doesn't actually technically kill them. The statue is now horrifically aware, and it's trapped in this state of like unbearable pain. And so that little mini blurb I was talking about when the girl is questioning Morathi, Malusai comes up, grips her from behind with the Scath Touch, and she turns into crystal, and that's how she stays. And the second type of Malusai is the Blood Stalker. Now, these are the ranged variants that have the bow, and they fight with their weapon called the Heart Seeker Bow, which is carved of a sentient tree called the Ash Dusk Tree, which is so incredibly cool, and I wonder how the Sylvaneth feel about that. It's not necessarily a Sylvaneth like Tree Lord or anything like that, but the fact that it is a sentient piece of nature would certainly seem like it would be something that would annoy them. Every arrow they shoot is blessed by a Hag Queen. As we talked about Hag Queens, they kind of do the manual upkeep of the army and its armaments. And the weapons they wield have the same enchantments that guide Morathi's spear, which is pretty intense. And really, that's all the information we really get about the Khinerai and the Malusai. As I said, that is the Scathborn, the elements of the army that we don't want shown to other Order factions for fear of their pushback. And they are very interesting, and seeing the diversity of how the Khinerai are very much more like elves, and the Malusai are kind of not very elven at all, just on a one-on-one comparison, gives me a lot of excitement for what the other gods are going to do for these elven souls that they have taken from Slaanesh. There's a big spectrum in there. But what I want to tack on here at the end is the Blood Rack Sorceress. And it is easy to think that she is somehow like an elevated Malusai. I certainly believed that when I picked up the Battle Tome. I just assumed it would be a Malusai who gains some kind of power and she's able to lead other Malusai, and that's basically it. But that's actually not her origin. The Blood Rack Sorceress is actually the result of a ritual called the Slith au Noir, which is what I'm pronouncing it as. Whenever a witch elf, hag queen, slaughter queen, any kind of basic elf like that becomes a rising star that maybe is rising a little too fast, or they begin to question Morathi and haven't been taken out by a Malusai, she selects them for this great honor. right? Imagine if somebody was kind of a doubting person at your local religious organization, and all of a sudden that big doubter got elevated to be the head pastor or whatever the equivalent is. That's a little strange, right? Well, here is what the ritual of Slith on War is. One of the snakes from Morathi's head bites the person, and the venom causes a long and painful transformation. It warps them, it breaks their soul a little bit, it absolutely decimates whoever it is in a very drawn out and painful process. And afterwards, they turn into the blood-racked sorceress that we see as the model. And they do look a lot like a Malusai. There are some kind of key aesthetic differences, but really they're just bigger and have magic and a little more independence. And somehow, magically, after this ritual, they are the most faithful and loyal servants, which is a nice little touch. Also, a key thing is that they are wizards, which makes me sometimes wonder, is there a reason why the Malusai can't use magic? Maybe the brokenness of their souls, the corruption kind of prevents them, and so to fill that void, blood-racked sorceresses are made? And that's a total wild speculation, I have no evidence of it. But moving away from speculation, I want to talk about why these units are cool. Right, there's 3 different types of units here, the Khinerai, Melusia, and the blood-racked sorceress, but why are they awesome in the context of this army? And as I've tried to do this week when I talk about units specifically, is I want to frame everything as how it fits into Morathi's lies and her goals. Again, this is really what the Battle Tome is all about. It's a big story of her lies. And the units that are formed by her tell us a lot. I sincerely think the Malusai and the blood-racked sorceress have the form that they do to keep Morathi from feeling alone. She wants more of herself in the world. Whereas the Khinerai seem to be more of a matter of utility, having more units that can travel great distances, do smashing alpha attacks, things like that. And I really do love the fact, I did touch on this earlier and I kind of jumped the gun, I love the fact that this is the part of the army that she doesn't want you to see. Much like she doesn't want you to see her own serpentine form, this is the part that needs to be hidden in order to make this lie work. Which is funny in great contrast because all the other armies that we've encountered really love showing off the big guy. Orcs love showing off the biggest and the bestest. And the Stormcast guy on a dragon comes careening in, right? Does like a Tokyo drift and smashes there and burps out magic and fireballs. Like everyone wants to display their biggest and bestest thing. But here's Morathi with her elite guard and her alpha people kind of staying hidden in Order cities because we don't want to show anyone. We don't want the cat out of the bag about who we are, what we look like, and how we conduct ourselves in combat. And so just the manner in which she approaches these units, her biggest, toughest, baddest units, demonstrates her desire and manipulation of public opinion, and is in and of itself another scheme. I love the fact that the Malusai act as the eyes and ears for Morathi at temples. If the other part we were just talking about demonstrates her control of public opinion external from her own temples and army, this represents her control internally, right? These are the internal police that Morathi has. And we were talking about the war covens, how really they're just a bunch of gangs, right? Very well hyper-organized gangs that she throws at one another to make them better, throws at missions, things like that. They kind of self-govern in that way. This is the top of the food chain. This is the biggest and bestest gang in that economy. And it's also the one you never see. Again, these things kind of stack upon one another. When you look at this sum totally, it is incredibly cool. And the last thing I want to touch on is the blood-racked sorceress. Why this unit specifically, because they went against what I thought was going to happen, like that she was just going to be a bigger, badder Malusai, really threw me for a loop and I fell in love with it. I love the fact that this punishment is presented as ascension, right? And you can see how this sounds in a hyper-religious ceremonial system. Because when you frame it as ascension versus punishment, it means a lot more to witch elves, right? They think to themselves, well, if they could ascend, this doubting person who didn't think Morathi was that great, I can surely do that too one day. And it kind of plays into their religious fervor and devotion on that level. And like I've always been saying, this army is about Morathi's great lie regarding Khaine. And so this is her way of taking that doubt, right? The cost of doubt in this army is spun as devotion. And that is epic. Okay, that's way cooler than just having an elevated Malusai. That's when you get into the nitty-gritty of like, how do I punish people? Doubt. Doubt is infectious and I can't let it inside my religion. So I take the doubters and I turn them into the most loyal followers by infecting them, and do it in such a way that everyone wants to be them because they think that this is an honor. And there's something quite genius and wholly insidious about that at the same time. And that kind of higher level thinking and manipulation makes them stand out differently than, say, leaders of even other religious types of armies, like, say, Clan Pestilence, Bone Splitters, anything like that. So friends, those are my thoughts on the Daughters of Khaine, the Scathborn, the Malusai, Khinerai, and the Blood-Racked Sorceress. And if you have an Age of Sigmar lore question, I would love to answer it. Go ahead and click subscribe and leave it in the comments down below. I read every comment and respond to as many as I possibly can, but I do use them all as inspiration for future videos. I am dedicating the next few videos to Daughters of Khaine still, but after that I'll be getting back to listener questions. So thank you guys so much for watching, and happy wargaming. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I want to introduce you to some awesome folks. These are my patrons over on Patreon, and they make this show possible by their direct support of me to buy battle tomes and Black Library books and all the material I need and the hardware support that I need to make this stuff possible. And if you'd like to join them, go ahead and click over to the Patreon page, to the link in the description down below, and you'll be introduced to a really awesome community of people talking about the hobby, sharing what they're painting. I invite them to be a part of polls to decide what content comes next. I raffle off every battle tome that I review, and we're having some great fun and discussions over there. So go ahead and check it out. Now, if you can't support in that way, that's completely fine. I'm just so glad that you watched this video here today. And if you have an Age of Sigmar lore question, go ahead and click subscribe and leave it in the comments down below. I read every single question and comment. I respond to as many as I possibly can, but I use them all as inspiration for future videos. So go ahead and do that now. And I look forward to seeing you guys on my next Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy wargaming.